Good morning, fellow members. We got a quorum at a appointed time. Let's the meeting begin. Can we invite the government reps into the room, please? This is the first meeting of the FAP. I'd like to introduce the government representatives present. Today we have Mr. James Lau, Secretary, Mr. Andrew Wong, Permanent Secretary, Mr. Joseph Chen, Under Secretary, and their team. And we are, and also Ms. Alice Lau, who is new to this panel. Can we have the Secretary to outline the policy initiatives of the Financial Services and Treasury Bureau? Today I will speak briefly on the key initiatives of the FST before the coming year. And first of all, thank you for coming. The financial service industry, as we know, is an important pillar of the Hong Kong economy, contributing to over 1/6 of our gross domestic product and providing about 250,000 jobs, account for over 6% of the working population. Hence, there's no doubt of its importance to Hong Kong. We'll continue to cooperate with industry and regulatory agencies to promote multifaceted development of our financial markets and adopt various measures to enhance Hong Kong's status as an international financial center and a major asset and wealth management center in the Asia-Pacific region. At the same time, we capitalize on the opportunities presented by the Belt and Road Initiative and the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area development, advancing financial cooperation in the mainland. The external environment is filled with uncertainties. The trade dispute between U.S. and mainland China will weigh on the global economic sentiments as well as trade and investment activities. The evolving Brexit development, the continuous normalization monetary policy by central banks, as well as depreciation of emerging market currencies may render the global financial and asset markets more volatile. I wish to point out that Hong Kong financial system has been tested time and again with a mature and sound regulatory system which can cope with market fluctuations. Our banking system is highly capable of fending off any potential attacks, with the average capital ratio well above the minimum regulatory requirement. The Hong Kong Monetary Authority has already conducted stress testing to appraise the banking system ability to cope with the impact of further escalation of the Sino-US trade dispute. The results shown that even at the most extreme circumstances, bank was still able to meet the regulatory requirements on capital and liquidity. The Securities and Futures Commission (SFC) has all along in closely monitoring the markets to ensure the trading and risk management system of Hong Kong Stock Exchange is capable of handling the impact of extreme market conditions. The government and financial regulators will continue to keep a close eye on the latest development in global and local financial markets and will work together to ensure the normal and smooth functioning of our financial system. And we will take a multi-pronged approach in implementing a series of measures to enforce our status as an international financial center. The Hong Kong Exchange and Clearing Limited has implemented the new listing regime to facilitate the listing of companies from the emerging and innovative sectors in Hong Kong since end of April this year. The HKEX will continue to enhance the listing regime with a view to further strengthening Hong Kong's overall competitiveness and developing Hong Kong into a premier fundraising platform. On consolidating Hong Kong's position as a major asset and wealth management center in the Asia-Pac region, we're reviewing the tax arrangements applicable to the fund industry. We plan to introduce legislation by the end of the year so that different types of onshore funds, like offshore funds, can enjoy profit tax exemption. We're also examining the suggestion of introducing a limited partnership regime for private equity funds in Hong Kong, which can afford the industry more choices in fund structures. We will also offering more choices as well. We'll continue to work on mutual recognition of funds, MRF arrangements with other jurisdictions to broaden the distribution network for our fund industry. In particular, we reached an agreement with the United Kingdom earlier this month on MRF. We'll continue to closely engage the financial industry and the relevant mainland authorities to explore expansion of the channels for the two-way flow of cross-boundary RMB funds. To capitalize on the opportunities arising from the development of the Greater Bay Area, we will leverage on Hong Kong's strengths as a leading international financial center, a global hub for offshore RMB business, and the international asset and wealth management center to promote the flows of factors of production, including capital, to tap into new markets for our financial industry. To facilitate the economic development therein, and reinforce and bolster Hong Kong's roles in the opening up of mainland China. We aim to develop and firmly establish Hong Kong as a leading hub for green finance in the region, with focus on mainland region China and economies along the Belt and Road. On fintech, the government will continue to promote the development of fintech through a five-pronged approach, namely promotion, facilitation, regulation, talent, and funding. Some major fintech initiatives, such as the faster payment system, the common QR code standard for retail payments, virtual banks, an open application program interface framework for the Hong Kong banking sector have recently or will soon be launched. For the insurance sector, the government will implement tax relief proposals to promote the development of marine insurance and the underwriting of specialty risk in Hong Kong, such as political and war risk in Hong Kong. And we'll also amend the relevant legislation to allow the catastrophic bonds of the special purpose vehicle to broaden, to offer more tools and management in Hong Kong. That we and the insurance authorities have actively pursued a number of measures to strengthen the regulatory framework for the insurance industry to enhance the protection of policyholders and promote the stable development of the insurance industry. The licensing regime.
The licensing regime for insurance intermediaries is expected to commence operation in mid-2019. The new licensing regime for insurance intermediaries is expected to commence operation in mid-2019. The IA is preparing the enabling legislation for establishing the Policyholders Protection Scheme and the risk-based capital regime. On financial security, this is the cornerstone of our success. And we should ensure the sound development of our financial system while enhancing our competitiveness. During the past year, Hong Kong has commenced the operation of a number of new legislations to combat money laundering and terrorism. The government will continue to monitor the latest security landscape and strengthen our AML and CTF regime as appropriate, having regard to international standards, and to reinforce Hong Kong's credibility as a transparent, trusted and competitive international financial centre. We will continue to press ahead with reform of our regulatory regime on auditors of listed entities. Upon the passage of the Financial Reporting Council Amendment Bill 2018 in LegCo, will provide a lump
嘅種子基金，協助該局從現有嘅核數師監管制度順利過渡至新嘅制度。另外，政府亦都就設立法定企業拯救程序同埋規管喺武力上債情況之下營商嘅條文， 係擬備條例嘅草案，旨在俾陷入短期財政困。
To help companies which are in financial difficulties to actually continue with the operation and don't have to be go into liquidation. On enhancing mandatory provident fund, the government and the MPFA has been striving to improve the MPF system and reduce the fees. In December this year, we will go to the FA panel to brief members about the progress and the operation of this new platform. The two-tier system for the profit tax system came into effect on April 1st this year. For the first $2 million for these corporations, they will the tax will be reduced by half. Furthermore, we will actively participate in the development of the Greater Bay Area and to promote the Greater Bay Area to become a global technology and innovation center. We are talking to the many authorities and we in the comprehensive avoidance of double taxation arrangement, we will reduce the tax liability of teachers and researchers from Hong Kong who work in the mainland. Since our Hong Kong taxation regime adopts the territorial source principle, the relief provided by the teachers' article may lead to double non-taxation of certain individuals. On the international front, we will continue to deliver our commitments to enhancing tax transparency and preventing cross-border tax evasion and actively expanding our network for CDTAs. In relation to automatic exchange of financial account information and tax matters, the first exchange with relevant jurisdictions was smoothly conducted in September 2018. Earlier this year, we signed CDTA with India and Finland, bringing the total number of 40. Our target is to increase the total number of our CDTAs to 50 in the next few years. The Chief Executive, in her 2017 policy address, suggested that IT development will be bolstered in 8 domains, one of which will be changing the government procurement model and considering adding IT as relevant requirement to encourage innovation. After careful study as promulgated in this year's policy address, we will introduce a new pro-innovation government procurement policy to provide an enabling environment that encourages bureaus and departments to adopt innovative suggestions and facilitates the participation of startups and SMEs. Our procurement policy has always been obtaining goods and services on value for money basis through a fair, transparent, and competitive procedure. These principles have not changed. We will, however, amend the stores and procurement regulations to reflect the policy intention in the guiding principle of value for money, which underpins our procurement regime, and that they should be assessed in terms of economy, effectiveness, and efficiency, taking into account the total cost instead of choosing the lowest bidder irrespective of quality. To encourage procurement departments to compare bids, and not just on price, but also on quality, we will promote a wider use of a marking scheme. We will also raise the allowed range of technical weighting from the current 30 to 40% to 50 to 70%. The procurement departments will also be required to preserve a minimum percentage of technical marks for assessing innovative suggestions submitted by the bidders, so that innovative tenders will stand a better chance of success. Departments may seek to approve the relevant tender boards to go beyond the allowed range of technical weighting to above 70% in tender evaluation, or the percentage of technical marks for innovative suggestions or experience. We have also reviewed on the requirement on tenderers' experience to minimize the entry barrier, we will advise procuring departments that tenderers' experience should in general not be set as essential as requirements unless absolutely necessary, and with the proper approval of the relevant tender boards. While tenderers' experience may continue to be assessed in the tender evaluation process, its weighting in the marking scheme should in general be kept at 15% of the total technical marks. The FSTB and the Government Logistics Department are now amending the procurement regulations. Furthermore, the relevant government departments will collaborate and introduce measures to facilitate the participation of SMEs and startups in government procurement. The Government Logistics Department will publish the government procurement plan to facilitate planning by prospective tenderers and joint pre-tendering briefings to help SMEs and startups to familiarize them with government procurement procedures. The ITB and the Efficiency Office will line up with innovation and technology industry players to organize trade shows to showcase available innovative solutions and enhance the awareness and knowledge of procurement departments of the latest technology that could be sourced from the market. To support pro-innovation procurement, the CDB and EFFO will also formulate guidelines to encourage procurement departments to adopt a design thinking so that they will proactively seek a better understanding of the needs of users before they draw up tender briefs. The relevant bureaus and departments are charging ahead with the preparation. The new procurement policy and arrangements will be applicable to goods and services and revenues contract up to for tender from April 1st, 2019 onwards. The relevant departments, the ITB, the Efficiency Office, and GLD will step up training to assist departments in grasping the latest IT trends and implement policies that embraces the pro-innovation procurement policy. Thank you, Secretary. We have 7 members who have put up their hands. The first being Mr. Chen Ying, followed by Holden Chow, Elvin Young, Chen Kin Bo, Starry Lee, and Kenneth Leung, and also Mr. Wuchi Wai. I think we have ample time. Shall we say each member be given 4 minutes, and if there is time, we can go for a second round. Mr. Chen Ying. Thank you. In para 10 of the paper, the Bureau talks about the opportunities arising from the Greater Bay Area and promoting the flow of capital and factors of production in the area. I think there have been several aspirations we've been talking about for a long time. I don't know when they will be implemented. First of all, facilitating residents of Hong Kong who do not have to go to the mainland before opening a bank account there. And secondly, the cross-border bridge. Hong Kong residents can apply for personal credit and mortgage. And thirdly, cross-border wealth management. So the residents from both sides can buy wealth management products on either side of the border. I don't know what is the progress of all these initiatives. And secondly, in paragraph 3, you talk about developing and strengthening Hong Kong as a premier, center for green finance. In the UK, the government will set up independent green finance investment banks and promote tax incentives for those who invest in green, for funds investing in green finance, and also provide for other concessions for the green finance products. I don't know whether you would learn from the experience of the UK to provide tax incentives. And thirdly, in paragraph 14, you talk about the faster payment system. We understand that there have been instances of fraud involving the system recently with leakage of personal data and personal identity. So after you've learned from the experience, will the government enhance the security of online financial transactions and lay down minimum safety measures and standards so that in future you don't have similar loopholes in the financial system going forward? Thank you. Mr. Chen talks about the cross-border arrangements like Hong Kong residents opening bank accounts in the mainland and applying for, credit and so on. I think we have the monetary authority and the banks have actually approached our counterparts in the mainland regarding Hong Kong residents opening bank accounts in the mainland, accreditation and other initiatives that will make it convenient for Hong Kong residents to work and live in the mainland, such as opening bank accounts. All these efforts are ongoing. As far as mortgage is concerned, we are also liaising with them. For wealth management products, I think this may have an impact on the opening of the capital account. So we are closely monitoring the evolvement of rules, regulations in the mainland. To answer the third question regarding the faster payment system, regarding the question of protection of privacy, the recent incident has been regrettable because some of the operators have adopted more, did not use double, certification. The HAMA proposed that there should be double certification, and they need to upon receiving the signal, they should adopt such certification if they could prove to ascertain the identity of the account holder. So the MA will actively monitor the situation, and I'll defer to my colleague to answer the second question. Regarding green finance, in the promotion of green finance, the government is has come up with subsidy schemes for bonds and also for accreditation. As far as tax, exemption for funds, even for offshore funds, they are already enjoying tax concessions. This year, as the Secretary said in his opening remarks, has indicated that before the end of this year, we will be introducing new legislation which will review the tax concession to offshore funds, which will also be extended to onshore funds. Mr. Holden Chow. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I have several questions. Earlier, some members of the public have reported to the authorities that the personal data have been stolen and some of the funds and accounts have been illegally, transferred. The MA has proved that it has nothing to do with the faster payment system. But regarding the opening of accounts for these payment systems, can you confirm that you will be adopting double, certification to ensure that it wouldn't be so easy for people to steal other people's personal data to open up such, accounts for payment systems? And secondly, in paragraph 7, you talk about the implementation of the weighted voting rights structure. Of course, I'm in favor of implementing this regime because we have to change with the times. But there is, however, the need for regulation. So the question is that does the government think that you will still not consider the possibility of class action for small investors? Because this is one form of regulation. But at this stage, is it that you will rule out the introduction of class action by small investors? And thirdly, in paragraph 12, you talk about private equity funds and they will be allowed to introduce a limited partnership regime. So according to experience in other jurisdictions, whenever you introduce a limited partnership regime, there have been incidents in which there were difficulties in differentiating between the limited partner and general partners, because the general partner would shoulder a greater responsibility. So when you bring in this regime, how do you differentiate between general partners and limited partners? And differentiate their, division of labor and their obligations.
Who would respond? As for a faster payment system, was the member concerned that whether they will use double verification by phone? The answer is positive. Since the HKMA has once again reminded operators that they should adopt a double verification authentication to ensure that the account holder is not imposed. It's just some of the operators is using some too simplified authentication procedures. As members mentioned, that it has nothing to do with the system design and the security of the FPS. It just they're not doing that good of a job for the account opening procedures. So they must review their own procedures, and they already suspended the simple account opening procedures. So they each probably have seen in the past rather like the teething problems at the early stage for some operators. I'm sure that after review that they follow the HKMA double authentication guidelines, they're able to resolve that. And on the weighted voting rights, on the rights of minority shareholders to take class action, we don't have any plans yet and to allow this, because for a class action, like we mentioned in the past, and under the Hong Kong court system, you can bundle cases of similar nature to be dealt with them simultaneously. And we have precedents before those. Class action is a rather major topic. It would also involve other profession other than us. Who else would respond as well? And for Mr. Holden's child's question, to create a limited partnership regime for private equity funds, we're still studying. So we'll consider the question raised by the members. And for the mature jurisdictions such as UK, so we understand that the respective rights and responsibility of the general partnership and the limited partnerships, while formulating the statutes, will give a thorough consideration for. Thanks for members for his views. Who else to supplement? On the limited and general partnerships, well, we have to make a clear differentiation. For general partnerships, they have unlimited liability. So that's why we have to separate the two. So the limited partnership regime itself at a limited liability. So GP is usually responsible for the management of the scheme. Let's say when it comes to bonus distribution, they will first have to be awarded to the LPs. Like Mr. Sun has said, their rules will be very clear on outlining their rights and responsibility would not be confused. And under this LP and GP regime is getting more popular in the fund management industry. Well, we should need to legislate, so we need some time to bring it forward. As time's up, if you have further questions, you can wait for another round. Next, Mr. Elvin Young. And Chairman, a question for the Secretary. Are you aware or even support HKMA and explore working with the central government's companies to identify overseas investment opportunities and consider making equity investments? As for the block by the Financial Secretary, as it represents the policy direction of the current administration, and whether the Secretary is supporting and aware of this policy. And last time we talked about the infrastructure investment potentially by HKMA, or as what is securitization business. For example, that's mentioned by the Hong Kong Mortgage Corporation. So we see how things unfold. Well, tomorrow, electrical, there will be a question which we offer more details when HKMA is considering this infrastructure or projects or in alternative investment on their risk assessment as well as the partner selection as well as the return and risk management. They will have a comprehensive checklist and we identify suitable opportunities. Well, at the start, they will work with multilateral agencies. Well, for example, they had announced previously in working with the the International Finance Corporation under World Bank on such kind of co-partnership fund on infrastructure. So it's when choosing the partners and risk management strategies, they tend to adopt a very high standards when they do identify appropriate opportunities that they will take part. The secretary has been very thorough. It seems to fail to answer directly on the block by the financial secretary that taking an equity investment on Belt and Road infrastructure, does it exist or what the Bureau is aware? Any supplement? Does exist as a general direction that we will consider this kind of investment, but in my detailed response, that while exploring this direction, they just won't casually enter some risky projects or simply for the sake of Belt and Road. That they will take into account their risk management and return on investment and so on. The Bureau has the right to place any restrictions or offer advice on this kind of investment or this unrelated to your Bureau. And Chairman, that HKMAs will fall under Financial Secretary, so that the Financial Secretary will give them instructions on their risk management and policies. Well, I would just want to take this opportunity to express the concern of some members of the public and using our taxpayers' money to invest in such kind of infrastructure. It may not be something every Hong Konger wish to see. Just want to make this point. Well, I still got some time left. So the U.S.-China trade dispute may further escalate. Have the Hong Kong government have their pile up their sandbags, and just to have something to assure the Hong Kong people? Well, just a concise reply then. Time's up. In my main speech, I mentioned that in terms of the trade wars, so we talk about financial services, the regulated authority, which is HKMA, and the SFC, they have conducted stress testing, and they will, well, for the recent market volatility, the futures and the margin trading where we managed to settle successfully, that will attach great importance, and from time to time we will monitor the situation. And on the trade war impact to Hong Kong trade and small and medium enterprise. And then the HKMC under HKMA, they have offered a SME financing guarantee scheme, which provide assistance on financing and providing liquidity for SMEs. So it will closely monitor the trade war to watch out for the impact to our economy and our financial system. Well, the financial sector have discussed this with the Secretary on many occasions. They're working on it. So in terms of defending our system against any future onslaught, we should be confident. Next, Mr. Wang Ting-Kwang. So this the old saying, just follow up on Mr. Chen Cheng-ying's question. The Hong Kong public or the Hong Kong companies and opening up accounts at the bank, especially the startup, at this moment, I received more than a handful of complaints. On the individual level, for legislative councillors like us, it takes months to open an account. All this multiple rounds of checking. So even if we submit all the information, it fail. So you're asking the startup company to provide 3 years of track record. Well, it's a startup, so where does the track record come from? Not only they're not able to open their accounts, the bigger banks, the major ones, and even the smaller banks declined. Well, they have nowhere to open their accounts. The same in the mainland. To open a bank account in the mainland, well, like people like us, well, if they identified maybe some kind of personality, they will refuse us. We talk about opening an account in China. I also received a complaint that in China you need to provide a residential address. Well, a lot of people don't own a home in China. They just want to have an account to have an e-wallet or for an Alipay and so forth. So the Hong Kong cannot use the mainland Alipay, so very difficult. I received tons of complaints, a lot of grumblings. The Hong Kong government, does it have any plans to iron out this issue with the mainland authorities? The Hong Kong government will have ensure that the anti-money laundering regulations that to strike a balance for the ease of opening account by the ordinary members of the public. Another question for the MPF. Well, as we all know, a year ago we have this default investment strategy to be launched last year. The DIS of a core accumulation fund as well, and the 65 plus fund, 2 parts. I want to find out the returns of the 2 DIS strategy. Do the Bureau have any data available for the public? Over the 18 months, I'm supposed to, it's time to take stock of their performances. And that's the demand from DAB that the DIS management fees, okay, the government, what is looking in that it can pay for the management cost for the DIS. Secretary. First, on the opening up of the accounts, the members' concern, we have received a lot of complaints on that. So we have communicated with the banks through the HKMA, and the besides the political exposed persons, that's a separate category altogether.
And the vetting will take some time. But regarding startups, we understand that the banks are concerned about the question of money laundering and other issues. And that's why the MA has on repeated occasions reminded banks to adopt a risk-based approach when clients open accounts. The Association of Banks are already working with the MA. They are building a professional organization platform to help smaller enterprises to implement the KYC so that there could be more information available when when an application to open an account is made, so that the procedure could be streamlined. But we also like to point out that, and the banks have pointed out that when we talk to the fintech professionals, they say they are concerned that when companies are involved in blockchain technology, they are encountering difficulties. When they talk about blockchain technologies, some people say that they would like to go into the business of encrypted currencies or token currencies. And for such businesses, since there is a possibility of money laundering, and that's why recently FedF, the Financial Action Task Force, when they met in the last couple of weeks, they have said that we need to require reporting, and there should be transparency in respect of these transactions to ensure that they are safe and transparent. So as far as bank opening account is concerned, we will talk to the MA again. We'll take that issue up with them again. But for those cases where the risks are high, it takes time for the application to be processed. Regarding the return of the default, investment, strategy account in the MPA for MPA accounts, for the core account and the return for funds for those over the age of 16 is 7% and 2.6%. For the core fund is 7%. For those over 65, 2.6%. Regarding fees, we will be talking to the trustees, and we said that we will be, after 3 years after we've implemented the default investment strategy, we will review the cap on the fees. Recently, many of these companies are have steadily begun to reduce the fees because they realize that this is the government's expectation. Later on, when we come back to the panel, we will be briefing members about the implementation of the the new platform or the MPF2 to streamline the procedure for the trustees so that the fees could possibly be reduced further. So we're working hard on that. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chinkin Bo. Thank you. In the past 10 years, Hong Kong has already lost its status as an insurance hub. Several major insurance companies have moved the regional headquarters to Singapore. The current administration is actively rebuilding Hong Kong as an insurance hub to overcome the problem of population aging, retirement arrangement, and so on. I welcome all these initiatives, but I hope the government would note that although life insurance is developing well in Hong Kong, but other insurance companies are not progressing well. Over the years, we have been focusing on local insurance, but the opportunities now are all in the bigger regions, such as marine insurance, and catastrophe insurance, and so on. And we require many professionals to be involved. And also there are mega projects in the Greater Bay Area. So therefore we need more training. We need to train more experts and professionals. And these talents should have the experience in handling mega projects. Of course, we are pleased to know that the government has been talking about the need to develop professional talents in the insurance industry. We need to focus on developing such talents. But if Hong Kong really wants to become an international insurance hub, we need people who have expertise in mega projects. In the short term, we need to attract such talents into Hong Kong. We need to attract, large international brokers and reinsurance companies to come to Hong Kong. Many of them have offices in Hong Kong, but they do not set up the regional offices here. So if Hong Kong really wants to develop itself into an insurance hub, the government should try to attract more international talents to come here so that we can really, expand the insurance industry for Hong Kong. Hopefully in the next few years, the government will come up with bolder initiatives other than tax concessions. If a foreign insurance company could bring so many talents in Hong Kong and create employment in Hong Kong, I think we should consider offering them concessions. In Hong Kong, our rivals are working so hard to attract talents, and someone have told me that after they have been attracted to go to a certain jurisdiction, that jurisdiction may require, some governments in those jurisdictions will require the companies to move the business to the respective countries. So that is the root of the problem in Hong Kong. We really do not have enough, talents. Without such talents, you cannot develop the industry. So, of course, I hope the Secretary will note this, but I also like to ask the administration whether they have any preliminary thoughts on that. I'd like to thank the member for reminding us of the need to be concerned. For new business like marine insurance and the securitization of products and the insurance-linked securities or bonds, for the insurance-linked securities, we need professionals. We have an insurance pilot scheme, and it was a 3-year scheme aimed at training talents. So we have training from internship to the training of professionals, and we've earmarked $15 million for that project. We'll work closely with the industry. Hopefully, we could offer more training courses. The funding is there already. For infrastructure projects, insurance, and insurance for mega projects, they require a lot of professional expertise, and we will attempt to attract more of such talents. And when we talk to our mainland counterparts, we've reminded them that they could make greater use of the insurance service in Hong Kong. When we approach them on many occasions, they indicated that they are willing to support Hong Kong in this regard. So we will adopt a multi-pronged approach to fight for the insurance industry. Ms. Tari Lee. Thank you. I'd like to follow up on the question of Hong Kong residents opening accounts in the mainland. The Joint, Hong Kong Macau Bridges Commission, so is the XRL. So there is closer exchanges between residents in Hong Kong and the mainland. While we already have the bridge and the XRL, I think we need greater integration. In answering Mr. Chen Yin's question about, residents, opening account on the other side of the border, we've been following up on this for a long time. I think for Hong Kong residents who go to the mainland, we must resolve the question of enabling them to open up an e-wallet. I think the direct solution should be to help Hong Kong people to open such accounts in the mainland. The Secretary said that you're already in the process of negotiation with the mainland. You've told us that many times already. If you repeat the same answer, I don't think I can accept that. Do you know how many percent of the people of Hong Kong already have such e-wallets? If this is really, a major task that you have to undertake, you should have conducted a survey or study. So are you encountering many difficulties here? Do you have a timetable to tell us when Hong Kong people will be able to have to apply for such a e-wallet so that it wouldn't be so inconvenient when they go to the mainland? Secondly, regarding personal income tax. In the mainland, there's a new tax law which require Hong Kong residents to pay tax after they resided in the mainland for a period of time. You've seldom talk about this question. Secretary, is it that this is subject to be followed by Secretary Mr. Nip? Or, I mean, this is a major issue. Several 100,000 people from Hong Kong are working in the mainland. I understand that people who have homes in the mainland, they are now able to enjoy a 5-year exemption, and so I hope that the SAR administration should follow up on that. So is it your responsibility, or which bureau is responsible for that? Secretary, thank you. To answer Ms. Lee's question regarding e-wallet, we understand. Well, we're talking about two things here, the opening of bank accounts and e-wallets. As far as e-wallets are concerned, the operator of payment system in Hong Kong have been in touch with the mainland, and some companies in Hong Kong already have come up with arrangements in respect of cross-border payment, so that the Hong Kong residents with e-wallets could use such wallets in the mainland. They basically are working with Union Pay, and we understand that different operators of payment systems are using this channel, and they are talking to their mainland counterparts. Secretary, I have to interrupt here. Even though there are only a very small number of people in Hong Kong who own such e-wallets, I would like more people to be able to have access to e-wallets, so that we can have if we have to make a transaction in the mainland, we have to use cash. Now, have you asked why? Could you really, what is your role in facilitating this? You say many people have e-wallets. Are you talking about very few Hong Kong residents in Hong Kong actually have e-wallets? Well, in Hong Kong, we know all along that our payment instruments, we already have a very good retail payment infrastructure, including the octopus, credit cards, and so on. And that's why in Hong Kong, we would encourage people to make greater use of e-wallets. But since we have a good infrastructure in Hong Kong, the people in Hong Kong may not. When they go to the supermarkets, I've seen more people using e-wallets. Secretary, I think you're really out of touch with reality. The e-payment I'm talking about is to enable Hong Kong people to make transactions when they go to the mainland. I'm not talking about octopus. Do you realize that we are really very way behind for electronic payment? When we go to the mainland, very few people use e-wallets in the mainland, because in the past, e-wallets issued in Hong Kong cannot be used for retail payment in the mainland. But in the last few months, more operators of such payment systems are now working with Union Pay, so that more Hong Kong residents can make use of such payment facilities. So when these people from Hong Kong go to the mainland, there are more channels for them to use that system. And my guess is that more people in Hong Kong will use e-wallets to make payment in the mainland.
You can investigate and look into it. Even though this initiative has been launched, for what I know, a very small proportion of Hong Kong people are using it, and not popular. And Chairman, well, it has to do with the user's habit. Since after they've been launched, we'll encourage people to try it. Well, for the tourists and others, well, let's say the existing payment methods are equally convenient, and the incentive of using electronic payment will need time to nurture the habit. So on this front, we'll try to encourage the operators promotion and work harder on changing the usage habit. And there will be more Hong Kong people as spending in the Greater Bay Area. So having an electronic wallet will greatly enhance the convenience. The second question by Mr. Lee on the taxation. I'll stay for the second round then. Well, it's over. The time is up. Mr. Wuchiwei. I heard the opening speech from the Secretary that in the face of the U.S. China trade dispute, the Bureau had done a lot of rigorous stress testing on our financial system, and especially on extreme market conditions. And for this kind of stress testing, well, not only government would need to grasp the situation, the general public would also hope that they could able to assess before making any investment or to judge for their own situation. Will the government, well, for the extreme circumstances, what does the stress testing involved? And on the likelihood of this kind of scenarios, would you have any ideas just to enhance the transparency? Let's say the Federal Reserve in the U.S., well, maybe won't disclose the deliberations to the public, but however, through the meeting records, just to let the market had a rough idea on the observations by the administration, they will help the society to prepare for it. Instead of the administration holding all the information and only be patching up things when it happened, I wonder if the government can enhance the transparency. So, what kind of scenarios would entail under extreme market conditions, and would you have any arrangement information disclosure to let the public have a firmer grasp on the actual situation? And the electrical paper, para 10, on the cross-border financial services, and also we do with the capital flow. So in the process, are we still subject to the policy changes in the mainland? Well, we have a individual quota daily and a quota for the corporations, and these are part of the mainland policies when promoting the cross-boundary capital flow. So, are we aligned with the mainland authorities in this area, or we have a separate system dealing with it? And on the virtual bank licenses, and so the end of 2018, when it will be issued for the license, for the virtual bank license, well, in the wake of the faster payment system incidents, on the protection of personal particulars, would you take a lesson from the FES on the customer data protection for the licenses, that there will be step up to ensure that they will be protected by the virtual banks?
主席，關於議員第一個題目
As for the first question on the U.S.-China trade dispute, that what are the elements of the extreme market volatility? The HKMA and the SFC will work with the security companies for testing. Let's say there will be an interest hike or there will be liquidity crunch. Or the capital adequacy ratio, and for the securities company, they will mainly to their margin trading accounts as well as the leverage where they can capable of handling that. As on the connection with the general public handling of the U.S. trade dispute, they're probably not directly related, because we talk about financial services infrastructure and the operational soundness of the security companies, and for the public to make any investment decisions, that how they can draw reference. And the government has been reminded the public that the interest hike are rather abrupt, as in terms of the period, we haven't been follow with the U.S. It just only last week that we start hiking rates along with the U.S. And also the U.S. Federal Reserve had mentioned multiple times, even though the political circles have different views, their views have been clear that their interests will go up steadily, and the U.S. job market and the inflation is rather upbeat. So the Federal Reserve will regard the interest rate hike as necessary. Well, the public should bear the perception, will be aware of the perception that cash is king, and as well the interest rate when it comes to lending and mortgages and so on, the public will have to be aware of their risk exposure. Well, due to time constraint, I will have a brief response on the other questions. On the cross-boundary services, whether the mainland policies will affect the cross-boundary capital flow. The answer is yes. That's why we need to work with the mainland ministries that, let's say in the Greater Bay Area, that we accelerate the flow of people and talent for opening up accounts and so on, where especially capital is concerned. They're always subject to their capital control. Well, Hong Kong's capital control is less and less. The mainland residents have a 50,000 U.S. cap. When it comes to the financial products, we need to liaise with the mainland authorities whether they're under their regime, whether they're able to launch any pilot scheme that would allow Hong Kong preferential treatment in offering financial services. And on the virtual bank licenses, in terms of privacy protection, because we have a very high threshold for privacy requirements for banks, and of the stored value payment operator, the HKMA, will ensure the applicants there would have to meet the high threshold on customer data protection. Next, Deputy Chairman Mr. Kent Leung. 3 big questions on mutual funds, para 12. That you reviewed the tax arrangements applicable to funds that we plan to legislate to ensure that the onshore and the offshore funds were able to enjoy a tax exemption. And for the funds, I will talk about hedge fund or private equities or all funds. And if we give equal treatment to onshore and offshore funds, that a lot of the onshore funds were able to exploit the loophole of avoiding their payable tax. And on the mutual recognition of funds, I know that you've signed a MRF arrangement with the UK, and for Switzerland and France, that's 2 other countries in Europe. So what are the next countries to sign the MRF? I believe that in EU, Germany is important. Besides Germany, Luxembourg and Ireland. Will you consider those, or they've been underway? And continuing on Sterley's question on the coverage of the e-wallets, talk about the market trend penetration, but not instead of talking about how advanced our financial infrastructure being. Well, the secretary claimed the Union Pay. However, the Hong Kong public are using TNG, Android, Samsung Pay, Samsung Pay. Well, in Greater Bay, these cannot be used in the Greater Bay Area. And one more thing, we can't even use that in the mainland taxis. So if we can use this electronic payment system in the Greater Bay Area, well, the opening account in China will be less important. If you can use the electronic wallet, it can probably address most of the issues when people go up to traveling or working in Greater Bay Area. Of course, I can't things to change overnight. However, for the Greater Bay Area, you're obligated to help this payment system to use in China. Third question, I heard from Singapore. They have this government bit currency, which is a legitimate currency. However, when I asked my friends in the financial circles in Singapore, they claim they never heard of it. I saw on Facebook the information that the Singapore government had launched their own bit currency. May I ask the officials, have you ever heard of this? If so, it seems that Hong Kong is way backward. You didn't have the regulatory regime for it. On the funds, and for the onshore offshore, we have to give them equal treatments. Because the OECD criticize us for ring fencing. When it comes, the regulations would outline the coverage on the funds treatment and on the mutual recognition of funds with UK and Switzerland. So we proposed that to quite a few countries, and these countries have their own priorities. And to Luxembourg on uses, we have such similar arrangements. I went to Switzerland recently. I've asked them, well, the Switzerland system, there were 4 funds able to be sold in Switzerland. When I asked them why there's no Switzerland funds sold in Hong Kong, because they claim most of the funds already comply with users, therefore they don't need to have separate MRF arrangements. However, we shall discuss this with more jurisdictions. On Singapore, I don't know about this because different central banks such as Japan and the People's Bank of China and UK, they have a studying in which the central bank issuing electronic currency. Well, they're still at a very early stage. We need to find out the details, but are we looking into it as in ourselves? Well, for the central bank to issue this kind of cryptocurrency, at the International Financial Stability Committee is looking into it, and they will see if any consensus to reach going forward.
What different central banks are now looking into that. At this stage, we're still, at the looking into that. I think Dr. Low Wai Kok will be the last member for the first round, chairman. Green finance has all of a sudden become a hot topic in the financial market internationally. Over the past year in Hong Kong, we've seen some obvious progress. For example, we have the relevant, certification service being implemented and so on. On many occasions, these we've seen government officials participated in these activities in a high-profile manner and helped to promote it. I'd like to take this opportunity to point out that we should not just be focusing on slogans and so on. We should really actively promote that so that we can actually establish our status within the region, and that the relevant practitioners will have these new opportunities. So my question is rather broad. So in front of the television screen, I think we should let more members of the public know whether or not there will be more of such opportunities for Hong Kong. I think members may want to go for the second round, so please be, brief. To briefly answer Dr. Loh's question regarding, certification of green funds. When we talk to our many authorities, we also encourage them to use the Hong Kong platform and use our certification, regime. We've already provided $800,000 of subsidy for such service. In Germany and Switzerland, when we talk to our counterparts there on fintech and so on, we've also brought up the issue. They have recently also issued green bonds, and I've encouraged them to make use of the platform in Hong Kong, and we will do the same for Asian investors. So we will certainly follow up on this actively. What's the second question? What I'd like to know is that for local financial institutions and public utilities organizations, and for them to make use of the opportunity brought about by the development of green finance. Since we already are providing certification service, what is the extent of the participation in green finance for the local organizations, other than the Link REIT and Town Gas and companies like those? They have already issued green bonds in Hong Kong. But in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong market is an international market. During the first half, we have issued $8 billion US of green bonds. Some are issued by the multilateral development banks, such as the World Bank. We hope that more such bonds could be listed in Hong Kong so that we can encourage local enterprises to issue these bonds on a greater scale. We've also talked to the airport authority, and they now have plans to issue green bonds in future. The MTRC, again, will be considering to issue such bonds as well. We've also approached Swire and other companies, and we encourage them to do the same. We only have 10 minutes left. Are there any members who would like to go for the second round? Chen Ying and Starry Lee. Mr. Chen Ying, thank you. In para 24, you talk about enhancing the mandatory provident fund and lowering the fees. There is the long-standing question of, the fees being too expensive. Do you have any plans to amend the method of the fees for the high risk? Scheme? The fees could be variable depending, and it is back to the performance of the fund. And secondly, the administration intends to implement an annual registration fee. The trade is saying that it should be based on the AUF, which tends to go up every year, and that means the fees will rise every year. So it would ensure that the MPFA will be accumulating more fees. So once it reaches a certain threshold, is it possible that it will stop charging further fees? Now, you also talk about new procurement policy. you say that experience is not a necessary requirement. That is, for each tender, the government will have to, vet the qualification of the tenderers. And how do you do that? When you vet the qualification of the tenderers, how efficient is that? And how do you ensure, on the one hand, that you will vet the qualification and at the same time, enable the SMEs to participate? How do you strike the balance? Regarding the management of different funds, there is one problem. What the MPFA is doing now is that they will require the trustees to make the fees more transparent so that the scheme members would know what are the fees for the different types of funds that they subscribe to. For the MPFA charging an annual registration fee of the trustees, the present ordinance already provides for this requirement. Under Section 22B of the MPF ordinance, it stipulates that the MPFA can only charge a fee in respect of the regulated activities. The law does not allow the MPFA to charge anything extra other than the fees relevant to those regulated activities. As to when, whether or not once every 2 or 3 years there could be a review, we can certainly take this up with the trustees. Indeed, we are liaising closely with the trustees and to explore this issue. What about procurement policy? Thank you. Mr. Chen is concerned about the government procurement process and how do we deal with the vetting of qualification of the tenderers. As the Secretary said in his opening remarks, regarding our procurement policy, one of our important objectives is that we want to encourage and make it facilitate startups and SMEs and to provide them with more opportunity to participate in government tenders. So as far as the vetting of qualification is concerned, we stress that in the procurement process we should not make it we'll lower the threshold so that the experience of the tenderer should not be one of the prerequisites. Of course, in some of the tenders, we do, based on practical considerations, we may need to have some requirements for the tenderers. While we would not, lay down this threshold in the, necessary requirements, but still we may need to consider the qualification of the tenderers. And in the course of making the procurement and in assessing the tender, in assessing the bids, we would allow only 15% or less weighting for the experience of the tenderers so that we can give more opportunities to startups and SMEs. We only still have a few more minutes left, and I note that several members would still like to ask questions. Perhaps we can extend the meeting by 15 minutes? Or no objection? Okay, in that case, we'll extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Ms. Starry Lee, 3 minutes each. Chairman, I'd like to actually talk about my views regarding the MPF. If you only make patchy improvements to the scheme, the public will still have the impression that the fees are too high and the return is low. I don't think you've answered the long-standing question. The public is asking whether you can give them a choice. That is, can you only, invest my, contribution in fixed deposits? I understand that you now have this default MPF, but that doesn't mean that no fees are charged. So you still cannot satisfy this humble, demand of the public. They don't want you to do anything. Just put my funds into fixed deposits. So the question is, the commitment or to be on the part of the government. And I don't think you should charge the public such a basic fee. I mean, you may not be able to give me an answer today, but I hope the government will really give the public a choice so that there could only be, for some basic fees, you should not adopt 100% user pay principle. The Labor Department doesn't do that either. And secondly, regarding the impact on the personal income tax issue and how are you following up on that? We understand members concerned about the fees. In the default MPF scheme, we already have a cap on the fees, and we also understand that members would want funds which would charge a lower fees or even zero fees. When we conduct our review, we certainly bear that in mind to see whether there are ways for us to encourage the trustees to charge lower fees. As for the personal income tax, last time after we've implemented the personal tax legislation, we've been in touch with our mainland counterparts many times, and they understand our concern. And on the 20th of October, regarding the implementation of the personal income tax, they've actually published, a consultation paper, because they have noticed that the 183 days requirement was adopted to calculate whether the person satisfies the minimum residence requirement. And that means many people, Hong Kong people working in the mainland, will be outside the net. So they now clarified that for the past 5 years, if they have left Hong Kong for more than 30 days in a year, they will not be considered to be residents there. So in general, if you work for 5 years, and in the 5th year, if you are away from the mainland for more than 30 days, then you will not be caught. But what about the person having a residence in the mainland? In that case, it will not apply to them. Well, here we're talking about people working in the mainland. For people who are living in the mainland or retiring there, we're following up with the mainland authorities on this question. The question is whether or not the person has a residence or whether they are habitually residing at the mainland. They understand our concerns, and we hope to be able to come up with a solution. So thank you. Mr. Shukafai, thank you. Regarding the faster payment system, I understand that you've not launched it for a long time yet.
Well, when the press release, you have already deal with 1.2 million transactions with about 23 billion worth of transactions. That means demonstrate high demand. So it misreported that there were financial theft from the accounts. I know that it will be touched on by other members. Well, I'm sorry, I had to attend another meeting earlier, so I want to find out what do you plan to do. So for the victims of the kind of fraud, so who will be responsible? Will there be able to provide any kind of protection for the Hong Kong account holders? Well, some of the payment system operators have using some very simplified authentication procedures, which give rise to this problem. And HKMA has once alert the operators that to adopt a double verification, for example, through phone or SMS, that when they open up the account, they were not able to open account using a false identity because we have to send a message to the registered phone number or through two-factor authentication. The HKMA has already reminded the payment operators, and they're reviewing the procedures for those with problems. Or the payment operators, they already had more stringent account opening procedures. And for the affected persons, for the amount being transferred out not under their consent or involved in improper usage of accounts, they will not be responsible. I believe that they should take care of the problem. Thank you, Secretary. Well, that's a very good message, so that for those who want to try out the new technologies, they know that if it's not their fault, they will not be responsible for the losses. Just want to bring the message to Hong Kong people that if for the unauthorized theft of account balance. When opening up the accounts, you have quite a few ways. So what you mean by that? For the those involving theft, there involved operators using very simplified account opening procedures. If they adopt a more stringent method, the chance of theft is much lower. How do you bring out the message to the public? From what I heard, I got the concept. So, how should be carried in practice? And which of these store operators are safer? On one hand, we have issued multiple notices to let through press release to let the public know of this, and these SVF operators, for the those in question, they have already suspended function and reviewed the procedures, and for those operators already have two-factor verification in place. Well, they have no issues with them. So the ordinary members of the public, when opening up an account with them, they were not able to come across the problems reported in the past. Next, Mr. Dennis Kwok. I know this question has been raised by members, but I care very much about it. I heard that the HKMA may invest the exchange funds onto the overseas infrastructure, which including Belt and Roads ones. So they regarded the return of this infrastructure projects would be higher than this would be as high as 15%. I wish to point out that the world see the Belt and Road infrastructure as problematic, especially at this change of administration. It'll see in Malaysia and Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Thailand, with this change of government, this infrastructure project would run into problems or even reversed. I don't hope the Hong Kong government and the HKMA, for the sake of high returns, in putting Hong Kong's taxpayers' money into this kind of problem projects, especially this Belt and Road areas, they carry high geopolitical risk. I hope that Secretary can bring this message to the government and the HKMA. This afternoon, we will see Rodney Chan, of HKMA, to highlight these issues. I don't see why the exchange fund need to be invested on this Belt and Road projects, especially the risk is so high. Secretary, please. The members concerned have been duly noted. I believe that the HKMA will fully aware that in my response to that similar question, the HKMA will pay special regard to risk management, so we'll bring this message to them. I hope the Secretary can understand that we're not seeing Belt and Road through tinted lenses, but we can see, well, just reading newspapers, that a lot of the governments had declared the Belt and Road that will withdraw Belt and Road projects. They think it's too expensive. then the numbers just don't add up. They don't see where the efficiency. Well, that the project will come to a halt. If we invest in them, our money will definitely be gone. Besides, there's some kind of try to please the mainland. Can you cite any special reasons investing these reasons? I hope that you can outline them. If we don't have sufficient rationale, I hope that you can invest on more traditional and sound financial products or like stocks. Of course, stocks may carry great volatility. If we could use our money on this kind of infrastructure projects, I hope that there will be a clear rationale. Let's say you regard sustainable energy should be invested by the exchange fund. That I understand. But invest in such risky countries on their political projects, I have grave reservations. I know that the Bureau have noted my concerns. Secretary, do you feel like responding? I agree with the risk assessment. That's why we'll keep a closer eye on that. Any other member would like to speak? If not, that's the end of the meeting. Thank you for the government's briefing and responses.